All right. Welcome to session 2 of our Building Bookworms workshop. This is our early literacy workshop for caregivers. Now, if you haven't viewed session 1 yet, make sure you go back, take a listen to that one. In that one, we went over the 6 early literacy skills. So it kind of set a foundation for these following sessions. But no worries, either way, you'll definitely get something out of this, even without viewing that first one. All right, so I'm ready to get started. So like I said, this is our early literacy workshop, and our theme for this is what you may already be doing. You may already be doing a lot of really good things to build your child's literacy, but hopefully this workshop can educate you just to be a little more intentional in specifically building your child's early literacy skills and taking it just a step further. All right, so just to introduce myself, my name is Kelly Carter. I work here at St. Louis Public Library on the Early Childhood Outreach team. I'm very passionate about the work that I do. I love working with kids, and I really love being able to pass on any knowledge I have to parents, any caregivers, anyone that works with the youth. So I'm very excited that I'm here and I'm able to do this. So let's get into it. All right, so to begin, I do want to touch on every child ready to read. Now, we talked briefly about this in the first session. Every child ready to read is those 5 practices: read, write, sing, talk, and play. And this session is going to dive deep into reading and writing specifically. So our objectives for tonight. We're going to focus primarily on reading and writing, like I said, and you're going to have a better grasp of how to pick out a book that is age appropriate. And you'll also be able to understand the progression of your child's writing. And with both of these objectives, lots of information on what you can do at home to support. Okay, so let's first start by talking about simple things that you're already doing that are already building literacy skills. Now, as I'm going through these questions, I want you to just think about what you're already doing, because there's lots of really simple ways that we can build or even model literacy in our homes. So number 1, do you read a book every night before bedtime? Or maybe not even before bedtime. Do you read a book every day? Do you read the newspaper? Do you read recipes? Do you read street signs when you're out? Do you read books in your native language? Do you have fun, silly, enjoyable interactions with your child when you're reading? And I mean, do your children see you reading? Do you model for them? All right, so just think about those questions. Think about things that we're already doing. Now, to kind of set the foundation here, let's first talk about the importance of reading aloud to your child, right? It's something we hear a lot about, right? We know we should be doing it. So let's break this down into exactly why this is important for your child's literacy development, okay? So 1, it's going to strengthen their language skills, okay? Reading stories aloud to children is going to help them start to understand the structure and the format of language, just how language works, right? The first session, we talked about the skills print awareness and background knowledge, learning how language works, how stories work through reading aloud. It's going to build those skills, right? And it's also going to help develop their vocabulary. They're going to hear and learn new words through these books, okay? Now, reading also helps them develop emotionally, okay? Children see themselves in characters, and through those characters, they're going to start to understand how a character feels, which is going to start developing that empathy, which we hope turns into, translating into real world experience, right? Something that they can use in the real world. There's also lots of books that are great conversation starters, right? So kind of those they're kind of tough topics, to have those conversations. Reading books on values and morals, they can start that conversation between you and your child. Being read to is also going to increase their attention span. Okay, so when you're reading to them, they're going to need to pay attention to all parts of the story, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And being read to is going to hold their attention. It's going to strengthen their ability to concentrate and focus for, a significant period of time, right? We're going to build up that endurance. And then lastly, the bond between you and your child, okay? Reading time is a special time, so it's really going to strengthen the bond between you two, right? Okay, so now let's talk about choosing books for your child, okay? Now, this is where I'm going to give a disclaimer, right? Reading any book is a great thing, okay? Do not get bogged down in this information. These are just helpful guidelines, right? But this is where we can become more intentional, right? And we can start to understand what is actually beneficial for our children, okay? So here first, we're looking at this infant age range, kind of that 0 to 1, very early age. So for infants, choosing small books, books that are easy to hold, look for high contrast books. High contrast books are books with black and white images or even bright colors, okay? Now, this is because a newborn's eyesight is not fully developed at birth. Seeing these high contrast or bright images is going to help develop that visual for them. And then look for simple books, maybe only 1 or 2 objects on a page. There's also soft vinyl or cloth books. Anything that can kind of withstand some exploration, right? At this age, we're introducing our children to books. So books are something to explore. We want them to hold them, shake them, chew them, pull them. We want them to do all of that, okay? We talked about print motivation, again, as an early literacy skill in that first session. Print motivation, that's enjoying reading, having an interest in reading. And so letting them have fun and play with books and explore them, that's the start of that print motivation. Okay. Now, what's also important to add here, there's going to be a lot of overlap in these guidelines, okay? What works for infants will still be great even as they get a little older, okay? So now we're looking at older and we're kind of looking at that 1 to 2 year age range now, okay? So when we're choosing those board books, remember, board books are durable. They're great for exploring, learning how a book works. You know, they're great for learning how a book works, like turning a page, okay? So choosing books that have those thick pages will help them, you know, start learning how to turn that page. Choosing books that have large pictures or even pictures of other babies. They love seeing pictures of other babies. Books that encourage further investigation, any kind of exploring, right? Peekaboo books, pop-up, lift the flap books. These are all fun books that really encourage engagement. You can also try to find ones with different textures for them to feel too. So again, kind of just that exploring, right? Okay. Now we're in the toddler 2 to 3 year age range, okay? Again, going to be a lot of overlap with all these age ranges. So here we have concept books. Now, concept books are books like ABC books, colors book, numbers books, any book that teaches those kind of beginning concepts. They're going to be great at this age. Now, it doesn't mean you can't introduce them before the age of 2, okay? Remember, this is just a guideline, okay? So, but at this age, they're probably just going to get a little more out of it than an infant would. Again, rhyming text, books with funny sounding words, they all make reading a really fun time. Books with songs, they love books with repetitive text, books with songs, you know, it allows them to read along with you and they love participating in that reading with you. Now is also a good time to start using books to help teach routine things, you know, like bedtime or mealtime. Reading a book before, reading a good night book before bed. It's a great way to end the day, say good night. And something I also want to point out, toddlers and babies are constantly on the move. They might not sit in one place for very long. So don't feel pressure to finish every book, okay? We get as far as we can. If your child loses interest, that's okay, right? The key is to not force them to sit and finish. Remember, reading is to be something enjoyable, okay? All right, and our last age range here that we're going to take a look at, we're looking at that 4 to 6 year age range now, okay? Now, at this age, kids love stories about things that they can relate to, right? Going to school, playing with friends, any kind of book that kind of mirrors their real life, okay? This is also a good time to introduce, new cultures, other ways of living. Books are a great tool for that. They're still going to love rhyming books, predictable text. Remember, they love reading along with you, and that does not change at this age. And then lastly, we have concept books. They're still going to be a great option even at this 4 to 6 year age range. Okay. So again, this is all about how we can be intentional with what we're doing. So those are just some little guidelines on books, of choosing books, just to make sure that we're really getting the most benefit out of books, right? But again, any book is going to be great. So now I kind of want to get into exactly what reading can look like at this early childhood age range, right? Again, if you're reading to your child, that's great. You're already building early literacy skills. But again, let's see if we can be just a little more intentional with what we do while reading. So I have 2 video clips here. The first one is what we call pretend reading, okay? You're going to see a mom and her daughter, and the daughter is quote unquote reading the book, okay? She's using the pictures to tell the story. But I want you to notice how mom is just following her lead. She's allowing the child to tell the story. She's not correcting her. She's just asking her questions and following her lead. Okay, so let's watch this one.
The keeper said, stop, stop. And the elephant he's right there. The elephant's getting out first. The elephant gets that. Now somebody not holding it. The mouse. Does the mouse hold it?
Hold what?
A banana. Now we're getting tired.
They're all getting tired?
Yeah.
Who else is coming? Tell me about this.
Huh? This one?
What's that?
I don't know.
The hyena. And
Just a giraffe. The little one and the big, his sister and his daddy.
his daddy's coming too?
All right. So you can see the mom was really allowing the child to lead, right? She's really there just to support her and encourage her. Okay, so let's look at this next video now. This next one is showing how to read a wordless book. So a wordless book is a book without any words. It's just pictures. So this is similar to that first video in that the mom is going to let the child take the lead. But what I love about this video is the questions that the mom asks. She really encourages the engagement with the book through her questions. Also, I want you to notice how the mom extends what the child is saying. Okay, so we're going to watch for those things there. And let's watch this one.
What's this?
What is that?
I don't know.
That's a bear. What kind of bear is that?
A big bear.
A big bear? It's a polar bear. Is he eating too?
Yeah.
What's he eating?
A lollipop.
A lollipop? Looks like it could be that or a popsicle.
That bear's eating fishies.
Yeah.
Why are they eating fishies?
Because bears like to eat fish. They think they're yummy.
Why are they yelling?
Why do you think?
Does he want the mouse?
He wants the mouse? What's the mouse going to do?
And it's going to put up the tree.
He's going to go up the tree? What was he successful in doing?
Taking the string off.
Yeah, he took the strings off.
All right. Okay, so one of my favorite parts of that video is when the child asks why, and the mom counters it with, well, why do you think? Okay, it's something so small, but it encourages that higher level thinking, right? And also, the question at the end that the mom asked, what was he successful at doing? Notice how she didn't shy away from using a big word like successful, okay? Now, these types of conversations coupled with reading a book is where we can accomplish being intentional and taking it just a step further, okay? Instead of just ending a book, ask questions. Have a conversation about that book. Okay. Now, when you are just simply reading a book aloud to your child, these are just some things to focus on, okay? Making it a fun or a special time, okay? Going back to that print motivation skill, we want our children to associate positive experiences with books and reading. So by making it fun, we're building that print motivation skill. Read with expression, right? Really try to capture your child's attention, okay? You can vary your pace. You can read really fast. You can read really slow. Use different voices. Pause for emphasis. And I actually love that piece of advice because silence captures attention just as much as talking, right? You can be talking, and then you stop. And see how that silence is actually getting that attention just as much as if you were loudly speaking expressively, right? While you're reading, model your own thinking, okay? And that doesn't have to be anything high level, right? It can just be simple. Oh, I wonder what happened to the bear, right? Or I wonder if the mouse is sad now, okay? If you wanted to take it, a little higher, you can model your thinking aloud, like, well, that bear took the mouse's cheese. I know I'd be sad if someone took my cheese. I think the mouse might be sad now, okay? So you're just kind of modeling that thinking. You're modeling that cause and effect, thinking of a character's feelings, right? When you're reading, read slowly enough to kind of allow them to build their own mental pictures, allow them time to think about what's happening, right? And what might come next, okay? Don't fly through the book, right? And just like in those videos that we saw, let your child take the lead, okay? There's actually been plenty of times where I've been reading a story aloud and the kids that I'm reading it to, they pay particular attention to like a certain illustration or a certain part of the book that I just kind of wasn't expecting them to. Kind of surprises me. But it's not about me, right? It's about them and it's about their experience with the book. So you got to follow that lead and you got to let them explore, right? Okay. So like I said before, we are diving deep into the reading and the writing for early childhood. So now we're going to transition into the writing part of today's presentation. Okay, so moving on to writing in these early childhood stages. So let's first talk about some simple things that we're already doing to start building those skills. And just like before, I'm going to go through these questions. I just want you to think about what you may already be doing, okay? All right, so first question, does your child see you writing notes, thank you notes, lists? Do they see you texting? Do you ask questions when your child scribbles something or they draw or they write something? Do you ask questions about that? Does your child zip their coats, tie their shoes, use a utensil, right? That's going to be working those fine motor skills, okay? So just think about those things that you might already be doing. And all of these things are going to support your child's writing development in one way or another. So these are great starts. So let's now get into just how we can continue being intentional and building our child's early literacy skills, okay? Okay, so let's first talk about getting our kiddos ready to write, okay? So just like early literacy skills are the skills needed to be ready to learn to read, there are developments that we want our young ones to have in order to be ready to start writing, okay? So first, we have hand and finger strength, okay? A big part of their development in these early stages is going to be the development of their fine motor skills. This is the strengthening of those tiny muscles in a child's hands and fingers, which is going to help them hold and use a pencil later on. And we're actually going to talk a lot more about these fine motor skills coming up next. Then we have their upper body strength. Okay, this is more of the gross motor skills. And this is just understanding that the act of writing requires more than just the hands and fingers. Okay, shoulder strength, body control really do play an important role in controlling the movement during writing. Then over here, we have ability to use tools. So being able to use things like a toothbrush, a hairbrush, utensils, scissors, okay? Anything that involves those fine motor skills that's going to be very similar to them holding crayons or pencils, okay? And then visual perception. It's a kind of technical term for something that's really simple. Being able to make sense of what we're seeing, right? We want, our child's brain to start developing to where it can make sense of what it sees, okay? And then that allows them to be able to interpret, things such as letters and numbers, right? And then down here, we have coordination. So like hand-eye coordination, right? We know what that is. It's just being able to process information from the eyes, which will then direct our hands to perform a task, something such as handwriting, right? Or coloring. And then being able to use two hands. Okay. So writing is not a one-handed thing. When writing, they need to be able to use a pencil while the other hand is holding the paper, right? So there's got to be a little coordination between both of those hands. Okay. All right. So these are all skills that are needed for our children to even begin to write. Now, here's the thing. A lot of these things are going to come naturally, I don't want you to start, having your child lift dumbbells because I said they need upper body strength, right? That upper body strength it's going to come naturally, right? From them moving, them playing, running and jumping. Okay. That's going to come naturally. Okay. So let's get into some things we can do to start building these skills. Okay. All right. So I first want to talk about fine motor skills. Okay. So because in this very early age range, that's going to be a big focus. Okay. They're not going to jump right into writing. We have to kind of prepare them there. All right. So fine motor skills, like I said, it's using those small muscles in the hands and fingers. And it's actually really more important. I mean, it's obviously important for the academic readiness. Like we're saying, we're getting them ready to write. But fine motor skills are very important for other things, such as like taking care of themselves, things like brushing their hair, buttoning up their shirts. They also help cognitive development. They're needing to problem solve or even motor plan. Motor plan is when, they're figuring out the sequence of movements that are needed to complete a task. Okay. And then there's going to be the social and emotional benefits, right? They're going to boost their self-esteem and feel good when they can do something on their own, right? Okay. So now let's look into how we can build these fine motor skills, things that you can do right there at home. Okay. So some simple things, anything that really requires your child to use their fingers and their grip. Okay. Things like stringing beads, pinching, rolling Play-Doh, lacing activities, buttoning coats, buttoning shirts, zipping up coats, zipping up anything, puzzles, it allows them to manipulate those small pieces and place them in certain spots, and transfer activities. And so transfer activities sounds, again, something technical, but it's, really simple. It's anything that involves them picking up an item and placing it somewhere else, right? And they're using their hands and fingers, or maybe even tiny tongs, or maybe even clothespins. And transfer activities are cool because they're a good opportunity to practice multiple skills, right? If they're arranging objects, have them arrange it in a certain way. Arrange objects by color, arrange them by size. You can have them place objects in high up places, place objects in low places. So there's lots you can do with that. So anything kind of concentrating on using those fingers, strengthening those tiny muscles, those are all going to strengthen those fine motor skills. Okay. So now let's get into the actual development into writing, okay? Now, I do want to give credit here. I watched a great webinar put on by the Learning Without Tears organization, and they gave some really good info on this topic. So here is what we're seeing, kind of the progression that we can expect, okay? Now, just like how a child's not going to jump right into reading, they're not going to jump right into writing. There's going to be stages to this process, okay? Now, those first 2 years, roughly, going to be mainly scribbling and coloring, okay? And that's perfectly normal, all right? At this time, again, they're building those fine motor skills. They're just learning how to even hold a crayon, okay? And actually, coloring is actually a really important part of their development, okay? And it's actually kind of cool how something so fun and simple is actually really, really good for them. Through just coloring, they're strengthening their grip. They're learning control. They're learning how to use their helper hand. They're working on their posture. They're building strength. They're building their endurance. So, while really simple, coloring is actually really essential to their development. Then as they develop, you see they start to evolve. They are able to trace, and then eventually, obviously, writing their letters is what we hope they get to. Okay, so let's take a deeper look here. So looking at, we're going to start with 2-year-olds, okay? So this is when we can start to see some scribbling, because they should be able to at least hold a crayon. But you'll see when they're holding the crayon, the grip is just them with a fist, right? It's just a fisted grip. Their helper hand probably held up high. It's not down on the table. It's not holding the paper. Their shoulder is going to be up. So there's not going to be a ton of control in the hand and the fingers, which is why we just, why we see just the scribbling, right? And then really the first thing they're going to be able to do is draw horizontal and vertical lines. And now as they progress, looking at a 3-year-old, we're going to see that they're doing those horizontal vertical lines. We're going to start to see them progress into circles or curved lines and even crossed lines. Grip is probably still, a fisted grip. Their shoulder still up. Helper hand has probably came down at this point. So we're starting to see some progress, still a little rough, but we're starting to see that progress. Now looking at a 4-year-old, okay? This is when we see them kind of starting to become a writer, okay? They're able to hold that paper down. They're ready to learn the proper way to hold a crayon or a pencil. It's not just a fist. You can show them and try to manipulate their hand to hold it the correct way. They're learning control, which is allowing them to be more intentional. When using a crayon or a pencil, they'll start to be able to draw shapes like a square or a triangle. They're probably ready to start copying capital letters, which requires a lot of those pre-writing shapes and lines, right? If we're writing our letters, we're doing circles and curves and diagonal lines and horizontal and vertical lines. So they are probably ready to start there. And now the last age we're going to look at is a 5-year-old, okay? So here we're going to see that they have a lot of the mechanics down, okay? If they've been taught how to grip, so like I said, at a 4-year-old, you can start kind of showing them, hey, this is how you hold it. You want your fingertips here. So if they've been taught that by 5 years old, we're probably starting to see them get that down. Their forearm is now resting on the table. So before we were talking about their shoulders up, right? Now the shoulder's a little more relaxed. Their forearm is down and resting on the table. The helper hand is holding the paper. The control really transitions from the body into those fine motor skills in their hands and fingers. They're able to draw shapes, lines, diagonal lines, like I just said. A lot of the letters involve writing those kind of shapes and lines. So they're going to be able to start writing their letters. So we see that there really is a progression in how they develop with their writing, okay? And it's important to know that there is a progression, and it's not just one day they're able to do it, one day they're not. So it's important to recognize any development that you see and any progress that you see, because that's important, okay? Okay. Now, we're going to look at some writing examples, okay, just to kind of give you a visual, all right? So we're going to start here. So you're going to see it's just random scribbling, right? This is, like I said, in that 0 to 2 year age range. But then it moves to scribbling, but kind of being able to talk about that scribbling, right? This is why conversation is so important. We want them to start understanding that what they write down or what they draw can have meaning. And that really starts with you asking and starting conversations. And again, that's an opportunity to really be more intentional, right? Okay, you see your child scribbling, be intentional, ask a couple questions about it. Those simple things can really take that development to the next level. Then it moves to more controlled scribbling, right? You see that the scribbling kind of has a little more intentional shape. We see it moving from left to right. It's written in lines. Then next we start to see shapes forming, which is the beginning of them writing letters like we talked about. This comes from them having more control as they get better. And then next, we start to see actual letters, okay? They're starting to understand that they can convey meaning through writing. And at this point, they're just using the letters that they know, but it's that beginning stage, right? And again, this is where you can be really effective by asking them about it, or you can just even point out the letters that you see, saying, oh, I see you wrote an A right here. Good job. Or asking them, what letter is that? That's an M. Very good, right? And then last, we see much more controlled writing, right? They're putting letters together. They're writing from left to right. They're writing in lines. And this one even has a picture to go with it. So with this, a great opportunity to ask them what that says. If they're open to it, you can basically dictate for them, right? You can ask them what that says, write it correctly so that they can see that connection. And then again, it's just taking that little extra step. Okay. So some quick tips, when they do get to the stage where they're learning those letters and learning how to write those letters. So first, the order in which to teach letters depends on that progressive skill set like we talked about. So remember, the first thing they're going to be able to do is draw vertical and horizontal lines. So naturally, the first letters they're going to be able to write are going to be the letters with horizontal and vertical lines. Next, they progressed into drawing circles or curved lines. So the letters with curved lines will be what they're, able to write next. Big and little curves then, D, P, and V. And then last, kind of the more challenging are diagonal lines. So it's going to be all the letters that have those diagonals that obviously require a lot of control when writing. And then here, I just thought an interesting tip when it comes to tracing letters. Instead of this, using dots and thinking simply like, oh, just connect the dots, that can be confusing at times. So over here, use a highlighter or maybe even a gray crayon, just something that the child can write over. It kind of gives them a better guide when they're tracing. And then always indicate the starting point, right? You can use an arrow. You can even use like a smiley face, just something to let them know that, hey, this is where you start, okay? Okay, now we're going to look at how we can create a print-rich environment right here at home, okay? All right, so a print-rich environment, that just means that there's lots of print everywhere, right? We want our children to see as much text, letters, words, numbers, right? As much text as possible so that they can start building that print awareness, all right? So just some tips. Now, my first tip, start with a manageable space, okay? So start with their bedroom or just start with their play space, okay? Things you can do, hang posters, hang calendars, hang bulletin boards, okay? Anything that displays words and numbers, okay? Labeling things, okay? You can label the toy boxes, the markers, scissors, label parts of the room, label the furniture, okay? So labels are a really good thing to do. Posting instructions or reminders of things that they do often, post those step-by-steps for them, okay? It just kind of, again, connects that meaning between words and their meaning. Also, something that we don't think about, if they're watching a program, put the closed captioning on, okay? They can start seeing those words and making the connection to who is speaking those words, okay? Always try to make the labels at eye level. That's obviously just going to make it easier for them. But anytime you can incorporate the written form of something, it's going to be really helpful, okay? Again, just being a little more intentional, something that's kind of a little out of the norm. Be intentional, take it just a step further, and it's going to be really, really helpful for them. So let's take a look at some visual examples of creating a print-rich environment. So in this one, you see the toy bins are labeled, okay? Now they can be labeled however you want. Again, it's just about making that connection between a word and its meaning. Okay, now this one I just love, and I'll tell you why I love it. So one, playing is so important for literacy development, okay? But we're going to get into playing in a later session. But what I love about this one is all of the text. Okay, and that's what I want you to get out of this picture. I don't want you to think you have to set up a whole post office, but I do want you to think of all the opportunities to bring text into a play situation, okay? Look at all the ways that text is used in this play area, right? We have the obvious sign saying post office and the labeled mail slot, but we even have like an open close sign. We have the labeled bins for the different materials. Looks like we even have a scale. So this is just a really great way to show the meanings of words and learn new vocabulary through playing. All right, now this next one is another great one. With this example, I'm not saying, hey, you need to go cut out all these products and glue them to a big piece of paper. What I want you to get out of this is how you can find text in everyday products, okay? Things that you may use every day. Point the text out to your child. Point to the word, say the word, try to see if they can repeat it, just showing them that there is text everywhere, right? And what's cool about seeing words like this on a product is they'll start to associate these words with their logos. And while they won't exactly be reading it, they'll be building that print awareness, which is one of those 6 early literacy skills that we went over in that first session. All right, here, just a simple thing. Label your toys, right? And as you can label in your native language. If you're in a bilingual home, you can do both languages or just one. That's up to you. But just a really simple thing, labeling your toys. Another really simple one, labeling areas of the home. Here we have light switches, and you can label the on, the off, right? So again, just really something simple, but can really make a big difference. Okay. So just some really cool things that you can do to start building those literacy skills at home. All right. Well, we are going to wrap up this second session. Now, our takeaways from this session, number one, you are doing a great job, right? It's the little things that really make a difference. Remember, after watching these sessions, it's all about being just a little more intentional and applying just some of the things that you learned here, okay? When you're reading with your child, just remember it's all about the experience that you create, right? Make it fun, use expression, follow your child's lead, and then to get them ready to write, build those fine motor skills. Just use any opportunity that you can to build those small muscles. And anytime that you can show the connection between words and their meaning, right? It's those little things that are really going to make a difference. All right. And just taking a quick look ahead here, today's session focused on the reading and writing practices of every child ready to read. Now, the next sessions will get into singing and talking. And then the last session, we're going to wrap up with playing, and we're going to share some more helpful resources with you as well. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next session.